Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about how to make money in real estate without capital. Hey, did you know that you're going to make money in real estate even if you don't have a ton of capital to invest in the first place? In today's video, we're going to be walking through some creative real estate investing strategies, some ways for you to get going or keep going with real estate investing using house hacking, using lease options, using joint venture capital, bring on private investors, all sorts of different ways that don't involve a lot of cash on your part. All right, so the first tactic I want to show you is house hacking. What does house hacking mean? Well, let's say you already own a home that you're living in. You've already purchased it. You've already put up the down payment for that. And you're looking to get going with real estate investing, make some money from it. You can house hack your own home. So that can look like a few different ways. First thing is you can actually rent out a spare bedroom if you've got one. You could do an Airbnb like the original Airbnbs were, where you rent out a room in your house, or you can have a long-term tenant in there. If you've got a basement and you can put a suite in there, you could rent out a secondary suite in your property. If you're just getting started and you've got a few bucks for buying a property, instead of buying a regular house, maybe you could look at buying a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex. That can still count as your primary residence, as your home. You can still get residential financing for that for as little as 5% down. But now you've got other tenants helping to pay the mortgage. Especially if you've got a fourplex, this is beautiful. You live in one unit, you've got the other 3 units rented out. They're all helping you to pay your mortgage. In fact, you might even be making a few bucks depending on where you live. I was actually just interviewing a very interesting lady on my podcast a few days ago, Carol Ann, and that's exactly what she and her husband did a number of years ago, over 10 years ago now. they moved from Quebec to Alberta, 2 different provinces in Canada. So Quebec, they speak French. They've got all of their own real estate rules and regulations. They moved clear across the country, brand new province, completely different rules and regulations. And they got into their first home, and it was a 4-bedroom house. It was just Carol Ann and her husband at the time. So they wanted to subsidize their expenses. So they rented out the other 3 rooms individually. They furnished them, they rented them out, and they had a lot of demand with transitory workers coming through that area working on the oil rig. So they're able to charge top dollar for those rooms because those guys would prefer to live in a house versus a hotel, and that not only covered their mortgage, but they were actually making something like $1,000 a month cash flow from house hacking their own home. That worked so well, they kept that property, they bought another property, they house hacked that second property as well, but this time they put in a basement suite. They lived in the upstairs, they rented out the downstairs, then a few years later, they bought their next property, etc. So over a number of years, they built up a portfolio of, I believe, 10 or 11 properties. They started off by house hacking their first 3. All right, another way to make money in real estate without capital is wholesaling. Now, this isn't really investing, but it is real estate. So what is wholesaling? Wholesaling is where you go out and you market and you look for motivated sellers and you find smoking deals on properties. And then you turn around and you sell the deal, not the property, you sell the contract to another real estate investor. So how does this typically work? Typically, this works really well if you're selling deals to flippers. So let's say you do all your marketing, you've got all this marketing going out, and you find a motivated seller who's willing to sell you their house at a very, very low price. You get that property under contract with the right to assign your contract to somebody else. Then you go find a flipper who's looking for deals, and you say, hey, I've got this great deal. It's already got $40,000, $50,000 worth of built-in equity in the deal from day one. Would you like to buy it? So then the flipper buys the deal from you. Perhaps they pay you $5,000 or $10,000 for finding that deal for them, for getting it all set up and everything like that. And you make your money that way. So that is wholesaling. That's another way. Doesn't require much money, does require a lot of time, but it's not really investing. All right, a third way to make money in real estate without much capital is lease options. What is a lease option? This is a fancy way of saying a rent-to-own deal. So I did a number of these back in the day when I was doing my initial creative type real estate investing. And a lease option is where you find a property seller who is willing to option the property to you. So you've got a right to buy it sometime in the future, the next 2 or 3 years at a specified price. And they're willing to rent it to you in the meantime with a right to sublet that property. Okay? So, for example, back in the day, I found a motivated property seller where I live who was a very frustrated landlord. This gentleman had purchased his rental property 3 or 4 years before, no, 5 years before, and things went well for the first year or two, and then he had 3 tenants from hell in a row. Ding, ding, ding. And he was just burnt out. All 3 of them destroyed the property. He had to renovate the whole property after each one. He just spent so much time and money on this property. He was negative on it. He just wanted to get rid of it. The challenge was he didn't have very much equity in the property, and at the time, the real estate market was kind of slow. So he didn't want to try to sell this with a realtor and have to pay all the commissions and all that kind of stuff. He saw my I Buy Houses marketing materials. He reached out to me, and this is the deal we came up to. I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to option to purchase this property from you at the price we agreed upon, but I'll give you that price sometime in the next 2 to 3 years. So I want a 3-year option on the property. He said, great, that's fine. And I said, in the meantime, I'm going to make your payments. I'm going to rent the property from you. I'll be making your mortgage payments so you don't have to worry about that. So that was a big win for him because he no longer had to come out of pocket. He'd had the house vacant for quite some time. He was really going negative on this property. So I said, hey, I'll make those payments for you. Don't worry about it. And then I explained to him exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn around and I'm going to find a buyer for this property, and I'm going to lease option it to them as well. So I'm going to option for them to be able to purchase the property 2 or 3 years down the road for a higher price than what I'm going to pay you, and they're going to pay me a higher rent than I'm going to pay you, and that's how I make my money. So everything was clear right from the get-go, and off we went, and that was a real win-win situation for everybody. He ended up not having to worry about the property. I ended up making about $35,000, $40,000 on that deal, and the real estate market kind of picked up in that time, and the end buyers actually ended up, at the time that they purchased the property, they were about $20,000 ahead between the value of the property at that time and what they agreed to pay me. So it was win-win-win. I solved his problem and helped them get into a house. So that is an explanation of a lease option. Okay, a fourth way to make money with real estate without any capital is sweat equity investing. What is sweat equity investing, you ask? Well, here's what it is. Let's say you want to get in on a deal, but you don't have any money. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to find somebody who's currently doing the kind of deals you want to do, and you're going to partner with them. But instead of bringing money to the table, because you don't have any, you're going to bring effort to the table. You're going to bring value to the table, non-monetary value. So what can that look like? Well, for example, if you're a handy kind of person, maybe you say, hey, I'd like to partner with you on a deal, and I'd like to do a lot of the renovations on the property. I'll do the labor, you provide the materials, and instead of paying me a salary, I would like a piece of equity in this deal, all right? So you work for equity, sweat equity. That's exactly what it means. Well, Dave, I'm not a handy kind of person. No problem, neither am I. You bring some sort of different kind of value to the table. So whatever that looks like, whatever the active investor needs help with, you can do that. So I have an example of this. A client of ours, Audi, wanted to get into doing BRRRR deals, but doing BRRRRs on kind of small commercial type properties. He didn't have any experience in that, so I connected him with some other clients who were doing exactly that, and they joined forces. Audi started working with these guys, doing marketing services, finding deals, bird dogging, all this kind of stuff, but instead of working for a salary, because Audi was doing well with his current job, he worked for equity. So he joined forces with them, and he got a little piece. Didn't get 50% of the deal. Don't kid yourself there. But he did get a slice of that deal. Then he was able to use those as examples for other future joint venture partners and say, hey, here's a deal that I worked on. Here's how it worked. All right, so it was a shortcut for him getting in on a deal. You can do the same thing with sweat equity. Another way to make money in real estate without capital is doing seller financing type deals. So it's kind of like that lease option example that I gave you, but there are other kinds of seller financing that you can look at where basically the seller acts as the bank. So in this case, typically it's where a seller owns his property free and clear. There's no mortgage on the property, and they're willing to sell it to you and finance that. Now, quite typically, to be perfectly frank with you, you're probably going to have to come up with some money for a down payment, but every once in a while, every blue moon, you might be able to find a situation where the seller has no underlying mortgage on the property and they're willing to finance it 100%. That is a dream situation. If you can do that, do those kind of deals as often as possible. But again, they're kind of few and far between. And last but not least, my favorite way for doing real estate deals without any capital is by doing joint venture partnerships. What does that mean? That means that you bring the deal to the table, you bring the experience to the table, you bring the team to the table, and you bring on a joint venture partner who brings their money and maybe their credit to the table, and you join forces. You have a joint venture partnership on this particular property. What's the big benefit there? The big benefit for you is that you're able to scale as big as you want, as fast as you want, as long as you're finding joint venture partners. So a lot of people are kind of hung up about this. Dave, I don't want to do a joint venture because I don't want to share my deal with somebody else. Well, get over it. I mean, if you want to grow, if you want to scale, you're going to have to start using other people's money. There's only so far you can go under your own financial steam. So here's the cool thing. When you bring on a joint venture partner, you can just keep cookie cutter doing these kind of deals. Deal after deal after deal, you just find a different joint venture partner for each one of these deals. And once you start getting a track record, you'll start to see that your joint venture partners start to reinvest with you, and they start to refer you, and they start to get testimonials. You get introductions to other people they know with capital as well. So doing joint ventures is the best way I know of to scale your portfolio and to do real estate deals without your money. You like the idea of doing joint ventures? Great, I got you covered. It's my book, The Money Partner Formula. You can get a free copy. Just click on the link in the description below or go to investorattractionbook.com. Because bottom line is, if you're looking to do real estate deals without much of your own money or without any of your own money, you're going to have to access other people's money. We got the formula for you, Money Partner Formula. Grab your copy today.